Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Susan Schwartz. I'm the Program Director for Pasadena Education Network, PEN, and welcome to Hello Middle School. This is our few years now we've been doing this program, and our goal is really to give you some basic idea of what to expect as your children transition to middle school in the fall and how you can support them. There's a lot to take in, so I would invite you to write any comments or clarifying questions in the chat, and we will try to catch them if we can and address them in the moment, or at least try to come back and address them at the end. We are recording this program and we will post the recording. And I think everybody who's here did sign up for this program on our website ahead of time, but if you did not do that, at some point, if you could put your email address into the chat, that way after the program, we're going to send a follow-up email with some links and some resource materials and the link to the recording and the slides and all that good stuff. So if you registered for this on our website, we have your email address, you're good. If not, you can at some point put your email in the chat, and that way we'll be sure to follow up with you with that material. So I'm going to go ahead and have Laura introduce herself, my colleague Laura Diaz-Allen, and then we'll briefly introduce our other guest speakers, and then we'll get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Diaz-Allen. I am the Director of Parent Engagement for Pasadena Education Network, and I have two teenagers of my own that have gone through this process. Happy to see everyone.
So yeah, I should have mentioned my kids are grown now, but they have been through middle school, and I remember it well, as does one of our co-presenters tonight, Ms. Stella Franco-Allen, was at Elliott when my daughter was at Elliott. So we have with us tonight Stella Franco-Allen, who is community schools liaison, I believe, at Washington Middle School, soon to become Octavia E. Butler Magnet Academy. And we have Mr. Eric Glenn, who is a teacher at Blair, teaching, I think, 6th and 7th grade math there. And who else do we have? With Terry Richardson, who is a current middle school parent. And I think we may have a few other middle school parents on the call as well. So our plan is to go ahead and do some presentation. We'll have Mr. Glenn and Ms. Franco-Allen jump in with some comments. And then as we get into more of the, what kinds of strategies can you use to support your child, we'll ask our parents, current middle school parents, to also chime in with their tips and strategies and ideas and perspectives on these things. So any questions before we get started? All right, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. If I can remember how to do this. So this is our agenda for tonight. Hide that. And okay, so as I said, our goal this evening is to kind of review a little bit about what it is that makes middle school special, what makes it different from elementary school, and what makes this such a unique time. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with our middle schoolers, kind of inside and out, what's happening inside their brains, what's happening in their social world. Then we'll shift to what they need from us, and we'll get some perspectives both from our teacher and school staff folks tonight about how the teachers and staff support our middle schoolers at school, and also about what we can be doing from home as parents and caregivers. And we'll have some discussion about some of the tools and resources that you can make use of, and hopefully we will have time for a little bit of just questions and discussion at the end. However, as I said, if you have a question that just comes right to your mind, and you go ahead and put it in the chat, that way, if we don't get to it this evening, we'll try to follow up in our follow-up communication and answer some of those additional questions. So let's see. find my cursor here. Okay, there we go. So what's new? I don't know. You probably remember when your child started kindergarten. It was a big deal to drop off your baby at that big school. And so now here we are making the next transition. So let's take a little moment to look at what the big middle school looks like for our rising sixth graders. And I know I saw Victoria on the call, and I think that's your son in the middle there looking at his middle school schedule on day one. So what are some of the things that are different? Obviously, it is a bigger campus probably than their elementary school. They're going to be in with kids from different schools, so they'll be meeting new people, which I think for most middle schoolers is actually a really good thing, but it can feel a little daunting when you're first going in. They're going to be having multiple periods. So in the elementary school day is more or less undifferentiated. There are times that the teachers have for doing different things, but it's mostly all in one classroom. There's not a passing period where kids are moving from classroom to classroom. Multiple teachers, obviously, as well. So including teachers who are single subject teachers, and so, particularly well-versed in their topic is a difference. They will be getting letter grades and homework and classwork, as well as tests and quizzes will tend to count towards a student's grades. They'll be dressing for PE every day, and that participation is required and graded. They're going to have greater independence on the whole and more responsibility. So they will be expected to get to class on time and work more independently, have their own materials. There'll be a larger volume of work. And when they're absent, they're going to have to make up that work. And I should mention as well that attendance is taken in each period of the day. So they're, it's not just a matter of did you come to school at all, it's did you show up to each class. So more responsibility. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, the biggest difference in terms of the school setting. Now let's sort of talk a little bit about actually what's different for the middle schoolers, for these amazing little people of ours. And I'm going to actually let Mr. Glenn tell us a little bit about, from a teacher's perspective, what are these people like? What do you like about teaching middle schoolers? What characterizes them? And I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, so when I was hired at Blair, I've been teaching for 12 years, and I've been at Blair for 5 years. And then the 6 years before coming to Blair, 7 years before coming to Blair, I taught high school. And when I signed the papers on to work at Blair, they were like, "You're teaching 6th and 7th graders," and I was used to teaching, 9th through 12th graders, but I don't think I'll ever go back. I really have enjoyed teaching 6th and 7th graders. It was a learning curve, obviously, at the beginning, but it has been a great experience, and I don't think I'll ever not teach middle school anymore. At least if I have anything to do with it. So I'm loving the age group, and it's fun for me because I can be totally silly with them, and they still think I'm kind of cool, and so we have a lot of fun in class and stuff like that. So let's see. I think that, one of the biggest things I think that I have noticed is, middle schoolers, they want to be talked to like they're adults, but you can't really reason with them like they're adults. And so you kind of have to have that, that balance between, I'm going to treat you like, like an old person, like an adult, but at the same time, like, I'm not going to argue with you like an adult, or to have it sort of any sort of discussion. And I think their brains are going from abstract, from concrete to abstract. I think 6th graders have are kind of starting that process of kind of, thinking kind of black and white and kind of more in the gray. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Is there anything else like, I don't know. I mean, maybe, is there anything
I'll
else?
give you a prompt.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so you're standing there in front of this class of kids. About how many would you have in a classroom?
Oh, that's okay. So I think my average is about 35 kids.
Okay.
And I have my most, the class that I have my most is about 40, and my least is about 32.
Okay.
And so they're all in groups. I really want them to talk with each other. I think that middle schoolers need to talk to each other to learn. So the room is not silent. And I like it that way. In fact, I get kind of awkward when it is like fully silent. I'm like, what is going on here? I think they should be talking to each other, but it's more of a controlled chaos in the room, I think, so.
Okay. And
Did you have anything
Okay.
else, Laura, you wanted to ask at this
well,
point? or-
just a mental image, as opposed to like elementary school or high school kids, is there anything qualitatively different about them?
Between middle school and high school students, I mean, yeah, I think that they still want to be around adults. I think, they really enjoy. I think that, depending on the teacher's level of I don't know, opening their rooms up at lunch and things like that. Like, I think that they will still gravitate toward adults and they want to be with them, and high schoolers just don't. Like, I feel like they would much rather not be with adults. I don't.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't. If there's
That's
anything
great.
else,
We're gonna come back and
Yes.
talk. There'll be other opportunities to get into more specifics. So we're at this point
That's
just
awesome.
sort of setting the scene, I think. So that's great. Thank you. I'm gonna go back. I always know how to do this right. So I think, we have some sense of what our tweens look like on the outside, the physical changes that are starting anywhere from the ages of 8 to 13 for girls and 9 to 14 for boys. They might be getting, suddenly a lot taller, filling out, braces, acne, etc. All those great things that y'all remember from being that age. But now we're going to actually sort of transition a little bit to think about what's going on inside their brains, in their social world. So I'm going to shift here and let Laura talk a little bit about the middle school brain, what's going on inside.
So just like Mr. Glenn said, how they're changing from being more concrete to more abstract, right? What's happening is that the brain is actually restructuring, rewiring, getting an upgrade. And so they're just a lot smarter. And by the end of adolescence, they're going to be just as smart, if not smarter than any of us, right? They can now grasp more abstract concepts, memorize more things. But what's happening is that the different parts of the brain are not really all working well together. The brain is still a little glitchy. So there are parts of the brain, like the amygdala, which is, Susan's going to show it right there, which is the seat of emotions, and such as anger. And that area is really, really on. It's super turned on at this age. And so if you've met a kid this age, you will have noticed that they're very emotional, right? They make most of their decisions through their emotions, through the amygdala. What is not as developed yet is the prefrontal cortex, which sits right here, which is the part of the brain that helps us make good decisions, like I'm on a diet, I'm not going to eat this cake, I'm going to have this apple, or I can't spend more money because I just don't have it in my banking account. Those are really hard decisions for kids this age to make because their brain is just not developed yet, and it will continue to develop into their late 20s. So that is one of the things that's happening. The other thing that's happening a little bit is you'll see there this thing called a corpus callosum. It basically joins both sides of the brain and allows people to put names to emotions. So gradually they get better at saying, you know, this feeling that I have in my body is anger, but they're not quite there yet. So that isn't basically what's happening. The other thing I do want to share with you is that at this age, kids are really susceptible to addiction. And I'm not just talking about, you know, the usuals like drugs and alcohol, but social media, anything. I mean, they're just really passionate and they really latch on to things. So this is just a little something to watch out for in your kids. And to right, Minecraft. Thank you, Esperanza. So video games, you know, shows, whatever, they just don't seem to have much of a break. So that's just a place where parents might need to support them. Okay, so that's the main gist of what's happening inside of their brain. And just so we know, the brain is developing both in response to hormones, right? But also in response to what's going on outside of their bodies, like, you know, their environment, their peers, their parents, what they're watching, all that stuff. Okay, so the next thing we're going to touch on a little bit is their socio-emotional development. Just like, again, Mr. Glenn said, they're still tuned to adults. They still care what adults, their teachers, their parents think. They still respect and often just follow our values, right? But they're also now getting really interested in their peers. In fact, I've done some study that says that at the age of 12, kids brains that normally would have paid more attention to their mother's voice now listen to anybody but their mother's voice. So like more and more. So they're really just tuned in because more and more humans will be dependent on other people for their survival, right? Especially peers. So that's something that's happening. They also want more independence. They want more privacy, and they want more agency, you know, just the ability to do things on their own. They are a little bit like toddlers, like big toddlers, in that they want to do things on their own, right? But sometimes they're not able to do them yet. So if you remember, toddlers say things like, no, I do, or me do, right? Whether or not they can do it. Tweens are a little bit like that too. And so it's hard because adults, don't always know how much to support them, how much to let them do things on their own. So that's where we are. The good thing is that this is an opportunity for growth, right? So even though it's challenging and some families struggle more than others and some kids struggle more than others in school, it's an amazing opportunity to grow and get into the next stage. All right.
Okay, you were gonna, I think you had I forgot to.
I was gonna do what?
Oh, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Nothing. It's all good.
Ruin my day.
Oh, right. This, yes. So
this is back to the emotional living in the amygdala.
This is just a little thing to leave you with, what could go wrong and ruin my day, says a tween. These are the things that will ruin their day. A bad hair day, a pimple, my mom saying good morning, or my best friend not talking to me anymore. Again, this is such a tween, right? Big emotions, little things will totally set them off and ruin their day or their life. Okay, so that's that. And Susan, you had something.
Yeah, so I think, the thing that we've added this year in talking about this topic is of what's going on with our tweens is obviously, our brain is developing in response to hormones and these changes that come at this stage of life, but also in response to context. And clearly the last 2 years have had an impact on all of us and certainly our children's development. And in particular, certainly for some kids, the academic gaps is an issue, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. I'm just kind of framing it, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Glenn and Ms. Franco-Allen to sort of jump in and say a little bit more about what they've actually been observing. But also social development. So the in-person communication skills, when kids were remote, and it's been a while since they've been completely remote, but still those, a lot of more of the interaction is dependent on social social media and remote kinds of communications, and now being back in person, that's been an issue. Peer behavior is challenging. It sort of is anyway a little bit at this age. That's normal, but it's heightened, I think, by the fact that that we've spent time apart, that there's a little bit more happening in the social media space and less in the in-person space. And possibly for some kids, even the attitudes towards school and willingness to get involved in activities. And then real mental health issues. And again, this is not specific to PUSD. This is not specific entirely to middle schoolers either. But you know, a lot of people have had grief and are processing loss or suffering from depression and anxiety. And so this is just not to overstate it, but also not to avoid the topic either. So I'd actually kind of like to ask maybe Ms. Franco Allen and then Mr. Glenn, you know, feel free to jump in, both of you, with kind of how have you seen this in your school sites and classrooms, if you have anything to maybe say about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Glenn, did you want to go first?
Sure.
Certainly it has been a really tough time, even for those students that maybe prior to the pandemic didn't struggle with academics or their friendship groups and so on and so forth. It has been really a different world for them, as it has for all of us. And the mental health, social-emotional needs that they have are real. And you know, it's really important, certainly on our campus, teachers know their students, and as on all of our school campuses, teachers know when some students are a little bit off, or they're not maybe as jovial as they might be, or they have some concerns that could be happening as a result of being back on school, just reconnecting with their peer group, getting connections, you know, being connected and having their support friends is really important to them. They need that acceptance, and having been home as they have has been different place. So when they did come back on campus, it was pretty exciting, of course, but then it was a learning curve to interface now with more structure and the responsibility and talking with each other one-on-one. You mentioned that the technology and such, and I think that goes a long ways to say that they are they're designed to be kept in the hands of a lot of our students, of course, of everyone, actually, the general population. But resources and services are available. Support is available on the campuses to address needs that students might be coping with outside of school. So it could be something at home. It could be a situation that might be that may have affected them, but they don't know how to process it. So to just walk through a day knowing they've experienced something, but really not processing it, and so mental health services. Speaking with counselors, every school within our school district has resources and services that can support. And you as a parent know your children best. You recognize when things are not quite right, or you notice a change. Pay attention to those changes, and reach out for support. You know, I consider mental health services being coaches. We all of us have had to be coached in one way or another to learn to walk through life, really, or develop skills that we have. We've all received coaching in some way, shape, or form. And when a student needs that additional support, it is so important that they be provided the opportunity to receive it. I would just say it that way. And be connected with someone that they can that they can be comfortable with.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Glenn, do you want to add anything about what you've seen for kids at this stage? Like, not just the whole pandemic, but this past year in particular, anything you've noticed about how kids are coping or what kinds of things they're dealing with, either academically or otherwise?
Well, during the, I would just, I guess, like, just first thing, there seemed to have been, like, from the beginning of this year, almost a little bit of a behavior-wise, almost a little bit of an arrested development when it comes to, like, how certain age groups, like, behaved at school. For example, this year, I'm seeing 8th and our school is 6 through 12, so we have 6th graders through seniors, and I'm seeing 9th graders, first year in high school, whose last real school year was like 6th grade, like full school year was like 6th grade. Still playing tag, like on the middle school side, and 8th graders still playing tag, and I'm not used to that. Like it was really interesting for me to see that, and it was almost like, okay, so this is where I stopped, my on-campus activity, and I'm just going to pick right back up where I used to be, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of like the overarching theme that I see, and that I think our administration sees as well. Is just like, it's funny, like 8th graders wrestling with each other like they're in 6th grade. It's like, and like, I mean, yeah. So it's that kind of stuff that I think that I noticed. You're Miss Franco Allen, you're absolutely right. Like, I can spot something wrong with a kid as they walk into the class, and I can see it in their face usually. And like, Miss Allen said, they are very emotional. So you have to kind of be like, okay, is this serious, or is this like, I have that pimple, kind of thing. And so there, yeah, as far as like communication, like, I'm looking at that, and I feel like during the pandemic, the kids got so used to communicating virtually, whether it was on Zoom or like WebEx or whatever, or with social media or texting or FaceTime or whatever, that they almost like still default to that. Like, they won't communicate with each other and talk to each other, but I catch kids texting each other while they're in the same classroom. So it's like, why are you texting each other when you could just talk to the person that's right there 5 feet away from you? So yeah, there's definitely some impacts, I think, that the kids are showing, I guess.
I have to say that actually in that regard to that, my now 26-year-old, I remember when she was in middle school, that actually at lunch, kids would be texting each other, or group texting each other, instead of talking to each other in person sometimes. And that was really difficult for her at the time. She wasn't, so that's actually not new, but I'm sure it's much there's much more of that as a result of the pandemic.
Absolutely, yeah.
You remind me of something. When we first started this school year, we had our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders separated in areas during lunchtime. They were not combined yet because of the mask mandates and so on and so forth, very early in the school year. And then as things changed, they then became, they were brought together to share the same areas during lunchtime. And it was really interesting because the 6th graders were they were very playful. They were playing ball. They were even hopscotch. I can relate to what you said about going back to a period of time in elementary. They were even doing hopscotch, but when they came together, there was an obvious influence there of the older students too on that 6th grade. So there's a lot going on in their development, and that they notice within themselves when they're mixed in really with 7th and 8th graders who are a little older or more advanced, different habits, communication, and so on and so forth. So it was a real clear view when that happened. It was a recognized view for sure.
let's shift, thank you. And let's shift gears a little bit now and start to talk about what they need from us. In education, the term scaffolding refers to the ways that teachers provide successive levels of temporary support that help students reach higher levels of comprehension and skills that they wouldn't be able to reach without that assistance. So it's like physical scaffolding that you might have for a building under construction or for a sapling before it's strong enough to stand on its own. And the idea is that these supportive strategies are incrementally removed as they're no longer needed, and more responsibility shifts over to the student. So we're going to talk a little bit about that extra support that our kids need from us during this period of transition. And just to point out that 6th grade is a transitional year, but really all of middle school is a transitional period. And so we'll talk a little bit about the support they need, both in terms of academics and cognitive skills and keeping themselves organized, and also in terms of their personal habits and well-being. So I'm going to start first with sort of the role that teachers play in helping our 6th graders begin to get organized, take greater responsibility for their work, and so on. And so I'm going to start by just asking, I'll ask Mr. Glenn, paint us a picture of what happens during these first couple of weeks of school in terms of setting expectations, having a syllabus, practicing the tools that they have. Can you give us a little bit of that picture for a start?
Yeah, my first couple weeks is really setting routine. And I think that at least for me and the way my system works in my classes is that the routine, and once the student gets into the routine, it really helps them keep their mind off of what I need to, like, what should I do when I walk in? Like, that's just becomes kind of second nature to them. And that way they can just focus on the math that I'm teaching them, right? Instead of teaching them, instead of, having them confused about what to do. So routine is really important, but also setting norms in the class. For me, it's, I really have a huge emphasis on growth mindset. And so we do a lot of we do a couple projects where we make posters based on growth mindset, and knowing that in math, mistakes are important and mistakes are useful, and we can make mistakes, and that everybody can be a math person, not, and it's not just like a natural ability, that kind of stuff. I know that with different subjects, it's kind of different, but this is the kind of stuff that I really want to instill in my students right from the very beginning is how is this class going to be run? What do you need to do when you walk in? What's the first thing you do, so that they can just kind of focus on the learning. As far as syllabus is concerned, yeah, I make that, but the students don't read it as much as the parents do. And so I really think that for the students, just they kind of learn the routine by doing, whereas if they just kind of read a syllabus, it wouldn't make sense to them.
And just for clarification, can you
Yeah.
just explain what a syllabus is in case people aren't familiar with the term?
Yeah, a syllabus is just like a description in words of how class goes. I don't know how else to kind of explain it, but all of the different details of kind of the umbrella policies of the teacher, what the student's going to be learning, what materials the students need, that kind of stuff. And it's usually the parents that read that and kind of help the students remember those things.
And where would the parents have access to that? Where would they see that?
So for me, I used to just print it out on paper, but now it's on Canvas. Now it's right there. You can there's a link right on my Canvas page that you can click on, and the syllabus is right there. And that's the thing. I don't know how many students actually click that link, but the parents do for sure.
Great.
And I think it was really helpful for the parents to click that link and read it and kind of help the students remember, hey, this is what Mr. Glenn needs you to have in his class. And mine is very simple compared to other teachers, like just a pencil and, you know, your computer. So, but yeah, that's kind of like what the syllabus is. I know that there's a lot of teachers that kind of require their students to write in a planner every day. I don't necessarily do that, but that's something that the teachers will help students do to kind of develop those executive functions and things like that.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my second question, so you've anticipated it. Do most teachers, as far as you know, and I realize you can't really speak too far beyond your own classroom, but work with middle school students, and especially sixth graders at the beginning, to sort of develop and practice their organizational skills, how to know what they need to do and keep things organized?
Yeah, so I think that there's a balance between having a lot of grace when it comes to this kind of stuff, because what I've noticed is, you know, even eighth graders don't have all of the executive functions that we think that they should have. Sixth graders have even less, right? So, and they're just kind of getting used to it all. So it's like, for example, like pencils and things like that. Lots of grace, lots of, you know, getting to class on time, lots of grace. As long as, you know, they're not doing it on purpose and being late on purpose, which is sometimes that happens. You know, getting to class on time, knowing what to do to walk in, coming in with your computer, your Chromebook charged, that kind of stuff is necessary these days. But also, you know, being like, okay, here's another pencil, but hey, how about you take care of this one and bring this one tomorrow? You know, like the one that I'm giving you, bring it back tomorrow. Take care of this pencil, you know, put it in your bag. For me, a lot of the student work is on Canvas, but a lot of the book work and things we do stays in class. But like there are some times where you know, a lot of my quizzes and tests, you know, will be made straight from the book, you know, like straight from the book, straight from our notes that we take. And it's like, okay, take good notes, because there might be a problem on the quiz that's exactly like this. And if you took good notes, you're gonna be able to use those on your test or quiz. And then I kind of help them learn if they don't. Like, you know, if they didn't take good notes, and I'm like, oh, this is the question that, you know, is on the quiz, and you didn't take good notes. So how about next time take the notes, like, you know, kind of thing. And they're like, oh, okay, you know. So I mean, I'm just kind of talking from the gut here. So.
There's also strategies in note taking, and I know that our teachers go over that, particularly in the beginning of the school year, as well as strategies using the Cornell or focused notes as a system of note taking. So it's having them with a binder and an agenda, utilizing the old traditional tabs per subject, so that they do get that instruction of how to pull their things and together and organize it. Common learning strategies are also covered in the early part of the school year in many classes, as well as, and then just a system of note taking, which might be formulated, if you can think of a piece of paper where it has a question, and then it has notes, and then it has questions that they would ask of themselves or of what they're trying to get an answer to, and then a summary. So there is a process to reach to gather the information that they need and to organize it. And I know teachers do cover these things in the beginning of the school year so that the students have more of a sense of taking their first steps, how to go about it, rather than the expectation of, well, you should have this, you know, by your test date, but they don't know how to get there. So there are a lot of steps that teachers do walk the students through to prepare them for this now onslaught of classes in different periods and different teachers and different due dates and deadlines and assignments for sure.
I wanted to just touch on something called accelerated learning. We learned about this about a year ago as we were coming back to the school year, where the district was talking about how they were going to close gaps for kids who'd missed some key concept in an earlier year. I don't know, Mr. Glenn, if you want to say anything about what that looks like from your perspective, just an example, maybe to kind of give people an idea of what that means.
Sure. The company line is accelerated learning is on grade level learning with just-in-time supports, and I really like that description. And that's what I've been doing in my math classes, both 6th and 7th grade. They have had on grade level material the entire year, and we've been going through the 6th grade standards the entire year. But there are, and this is one of the reasons why I really like the middle school curriculum and out of the book, is because one of the the problems in the book will be about a grade level concept, but it will involve skills that I can review in the same word problem, which is really cool. Like I can review long division in the same word problem that we're learning, unit rates and that kind of stuff. Where no matter where they're at coming into the school year, we're going to put them on grade level material and review as needed in the midst of those on grade level material, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great thing to know. I'm going to switch gears now, and I'm going to turn it over to Laura to talk about our role as parents in supporting our kids for getting and staying organized. And then I think Terry may be wanting to jump in with some examples and perspectives as well. But Laura, why don't you get us started?
Sure. So again, I think, starting 6th grade is a little bit like when kids started kindergarten, right? There were all these new routines, all these things that they had to do. And, it's after a summer. So as you're thinking about how you can support your child to make that transition, you have to sometimes think very concretely, right? So, and especially because the beginning of the school year, just like for kinder, kids can get pretty overwhelmed. There's just a lot happening, a lot of new information, new school, new, like Susan said, new peers, new teachers, a lot more teachers, all these rules. They may have a locker. They have to dress for PE. So it's just a lot. So I think the first thing that you need to do to support them is just to share with them that, yes, the beginning of the school year, there's going to be a lot happening and they're going to get used to it and you're going to be there for them and to let you know how you can support them. So that's like the number one thing, just expect it, right? And expect big feelings in the beginning. You should also know that the grades of 6th graders tend to go down a little bit compared to what they had for 5th grade. This is also something that happens in 9th grade. So those transition years, especially in the beginning, kids, it takes them a minute to find their footing and to figure out what kind of students they're going to be in this new place. So again, what I'm trying to say here is that your involvement as a parent will be very important to them, right? Like acting like, like their exoskeleton or their external hard drive or whatever it is, just that support that they're going to need as they move through all this. And they'll need you to help them plan their time and their planning. And there are just, I think it was Terry that was here that wanted to have some ideas. But one of the main things that Mr. Glenn talked about is that kids will be expected to bring in a charged Chromebook. They cannot work if they don't have a Chromebook, right? And there are outlets in the classroom and there may be some chargers, but if everybody forgets to charge their Chromebook, then they can't work. So that might be like a number one thing that you have to help them remember, that they have to charge their Chromebook and bring it to school every day. Another big one is that PE uniform. Like Susan was saying, they get a grade for dressing for PE. And if they left their uniform all wet and gross in their backpack on Friday, and now they don't want to wear it like that, now we have a problem, right? So you may have to remind them, take your uniform out of your bag on Friday, let's wash it. So very hands-on stuff like that. Terry, did you want to share some, I think it was Terry, right?
Yeah.
Some tips or tricks that you remember?
Yeah, I was going to say, just like it's important that you set up a routine in the classroom the first few weeks, I think it's just as important to set up a routine at home. So for example, when you come in, this is where you put your backpack, immediately go like take it to your Chromebook to your desk where you can plug it in and just start charging it then, or, you know, things like that. And have already a checklist or something like that you can use so that in the morning, you know, you have all of the right things that you need to have already to go, because the mornings are always hectic, so that you're already ready the night before. For example, that seems to work well in our family. You know, what's the routine for homework? Do you come home? Do you eat something? Do you watch TV, not watch TV, immediately do homework? You know, that sort of thing. Just kind of have that already in place and that routine so that it just becomes second nature, and that's what happens, so that things get done. In our family, I have found that making sure sleep is a priority is very important, especially in middle school. They would love to stay up as late as possible, talking to their friends or doing other things. But for us, I notice they do so much better at school when they are well rested. So that's, you know, part of the routine also for us is like making sure you're getting enough sleep. And then I have helped my kids by trying different ways to be organized. So for example, we had a paper planner that they can use. I showed them how to use the calendar function in their phone. And then also Canvas is actually really great for keeping my daughter organized. She can just go and look at all of the different, she can look at the calendar function of it, look at what all the different due dates are for all of our assignments. And that's her preferred way for staying organized. But it took using different modalities to figure out which was the best fit for her. So I think offering lots of different options for them so that they can find what works best.
Those are all amazingly great points.
I'll add, sleep. So kids at this age are needing, 8 to 10 hours, sometimes more. So ideally, if a kid has slept enough, they're waking up on their own. So if it's a real struggle to wake them up in the morning, as a parent, you have to think that maybe they're not getting enough sleep. So one expectation might be a clear bedtime, lights out at this time, maybe devices are not in the bedroom. Some kids have their phones, if they have a phone so that it's pinging all night, they can't sleep like that. So there's a lot, to have conversations with kids about, what do you need to get a good night's sleep? Okay, well, you can't sleep when your phone is next to your head and it's waking you up all night. So let's put it outside. So in my home, we found that having a dinner time and a bedtime were really helpful. In a place, like you said, to have the backpack. What's that expectation? So that's the thing.
Yeah, we have no phones in the bedroom at night. Those are always plugged in the kitchen, so they don't have access to that in the evening. I'm sorry.
No, there's just one quick thing. And Ms. Diaz-Allen, you mentioned that grades tend to go down in the 6th grade. And I would just encourage parents to kind of allow that to happen. Don't fully let go, but like allow your students to make mistakes. And I don't know, I'm afraid to say fail, but like sometimes that failure is actually can actually be turned around into a really good learning experience. And this is kind of what my classes are all about, is like making mistakes and learning from those mistakes and making adjustments for the next time. And so I would definitely say that, obviously don't fully let go, but like maybe allow some mistakes to happen, allow some failure to happen so that your student can learn from that.
That's an excellent point. I have to say, around that age, I told my kids that if they left something at home, I was not going to give it to them, and I was not going to take it to school. So if they left their PE uniform at home that day, well, they didn't get the credit or they got in trouble. If they left their Chromebook at home, they just couldn't work that day, and it was awful. So, you know, I don't mean let them forget a whole week, but a day where they kind of feel not good about their choices is a good thing. So
I think the other thing, Terry mentioned, you know, trying some different ways of keeping organized and trying to find, in your daughter's case, what worked best for her. That when you're thinking about setting up routines, you know, having that input, that should be a conversation with your student to some extent. You want them to have a routine, but what that routine consists of can be a negotiation too, because they ultimately need to own that for themselves. Anything else? I'm going to go on to.
I'm going to add a little bit as well.
Sure.
To do their homework. You know, they may not be ready to jump right into their homework. They might be hungry, or, you know, and needing some time for that as well. Take a little break before they go right into a homework phase right after school.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they have other activities they're involved in.
We've mentioned Canvas a few times now, so I'm going to just jump to a few of the tools and resources and how they're used here, and we'll include links in the follow-up email to learn more about how to use these things. But Laura, do you want to start us off here with the tools and resources?
yeah, I have to tell you, as a parent who has parented before and after Canvas, I love it. I love that I can just log on and see all my children's assignments, all their grades, what homework they have due, what they have not turned in, whether they were, you know, maybe they were late enough that they got an absent on one class. Just because then you can have some conversations with kids around what they need, right? So I really like Canvas. I have it on my phone. I check it. As my kids have gotten older, I try not to be, just like Mr. Glenn said, not to be on them all the time and give them a little room to make mistakes. But when things get bad enough, I will send a screenshot of, you know, 5 homeworks that have not been turned in, and I send that as a text to my kids with a little question mark. So I really appreciate having these tools. And so if you don't already have an account on Aries or on Canvas, follow the links that we're providing and make sure that you're signed on and that you play around with it so you can figure out how to use it. There's a lot on it. So yeah, for elementary, you may not have needed to use Aries as much, but from here on out for middle and high school, it's a really good tool to have.
So Canvas more for the day-to-day syllabus assignments, planning and monitoring, and Parent Portal, which is the Aries system for attendance, for grades. Anything else you want to say about the kind of the distinction there?
It does get a little tricky sometimes because most teachers use Canvas most of the time. But there are some teachers that don't, that they upload the grades, say, you know, every so often to Aries, or at the end of the term, they might send you an email with your child's progress once a week if you've signed up for it, or if that's their habit. So I think it's gotten a little bit more standardized, but sometimes you may go to say Aries looking for grades and something's missing. And so you may have to then go to Canvas and see how your kid is doing. So I think your kids will also get more used to each teacher and their way of doing things. So just because you don't see a grade, or because maybe a grade is not updated to reflect what your kid is telling you that they've done, say they've told you that they've turned in 5 assignments and that's not yet reflected in the grade that you're seeing, does not mean that your child is lying. It could be, or they could have made a mistake and not submitted it. But just look around a little bit. And if you're in doubt, you can send the teacher an email and ask questions. Or better yet, get your child used to sending the teacher an email or a Canvas message asking, where's my homework that I turned in?
Which brings us to when there's a question or a problem.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 and 2.
Right. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
No,
can,
go ahead.
I can share how my Canvas/Aries works. And I think it's different for every teacher. But the grades on Canvas are more accurate than the grades in Aries. I update my grades from Canvas to Aries once a week, every Friday. But the grades in Canvas for me are updated daily. And so I always tell the students, like, your grade it's going to be more accurate in Canvas because it gets updated every single day. And so that's how at least mine is. And I depending on the teacher and depending on their skill sets and comfort level and things like that, it'll be different for everybody.
If I can interject too, I think to get a full picture, keep on top of both of them. They do offer valuable information, each of them do. And in regards to the parent portal and the attendance, you can also see if they're getting to their classes on time, if there's an absence that's not correct, and inquire about that or get it corrected. That's important. And then, of course, the contacts, which is where I think about things too, is there's contacts there for those that you have given authorization to pick up your child, for example, emergency contacts. So that could be also a reminder to review those to make sure that information which is just as important for an emergency purpose, is up to date. So there's a lot of information on there.
It's a cool tool. You can even set alerts, say, tell me if my child's grade drops below a B or a C or whatever, and then it will send you something. So I really encourage you to play around with it. You can watch the videos. I tend to just play with things and figure it out. So you can do that too. Again, it's very helpful. All right. And so, and you do want to teach your child to advocate for themselves more and more. So it may be that at the beginning of the year, you're the one sending the email, but as your child gets a little bit more comfortable, you really want to encourage your kid to send that email, send that note, say, I turned in this assignment, I don't see it. My mom's bugging me about it, or I want to make sure that you got it. I've had my children CC me on emails just to make sure that they were doing them. This is when they were younger. So the system allows for that opportunity for kids to send the notes. Also, they could use their mouth and talk in class. They could say to the teacher with their lips and their tongue, they could say, Mr. Glenn, I turned in this assignment, I don't see it, or I have a question about the thing. So that's another thing that they could do. The counselor starts playing more of a role in class. In middle school, if kids have an issue, if they're having a problem with a teacher, sometimes that happens. They need to know where to go to the counselor's office and tell them what's going on or ask for help. Sometimes kids may have accommodations, a 504 or an IEP, and for some reason the teacher does not know it or is not implementing it. So that's another opportunity for a child to advocate for themselves if they can, or to have a conversation with the parent so the whole team can get on board.
Terry, did you want to jump in?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a question about the CC, that's a really good point. I don't think you can CC someone outside of the PUSD email. I've had my kids use their personal email to contact their teacher, which they can do. That's a good question, Blanca. Thank you.
Terry, did you want to say anything more on this topic of how you use these tools or the self-advocacy piece that you've had with your daughter?
I think Laura's pretty much covered it. I
Okay.
always make my kids write their own emails. I mean, I will review them if it helps them feel more comfortable, but I feel like it's an important skill for them to learn in middle school is how to write an email to an adult.
Great. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit back over to the social emotional support side. And so I'd like to start with just asking our two school staff people to tell us a little bit about how what social emotional supports look like at the school side of things in terms of whether it's personal devices, handling interpersonal conflicts, formal social emotional learning curriculum, opportunities for connection through extracurricular activities. Mr. Glenn, you want to start us?
Sure, I'll just kind of go down the lines and say what I think about each of those points. Cell phones, I can definitely agree with Ms. Diaz-Allen that addiction is a thing with cell phones. There are some times where I'll tell a student to put their phone away and like in their bag, like I'll be like, okay, now put your phone in your backpack and then close your backpack. But they have a hard time taking their hand out of their backpack because their phone is there and they need to touch it. Like it's crazy. And so, yeah, they're definitely that. So cell phone uses is, I honestly think that there are some kids who are addicted to it. And so, and so that's a kind of an issue. And the way I work it is like, I have a hard time just kind of stealing their phones, but a lot of times I'll say, hey, can I hold this for the period? I said, look, you'll be able to focus a heck of a lot better if you just let me hold it. And a lot of times they'll say, okay, I'll let you hold it. And it's like, if not, then, hey, just make sure that's in your backpack. I don't want to see it, that kind of thing. And then some of them have a really hard time. Yeah, interpersonal conflict, as far as like, dealing with hurt feelings or cheating boyfriends or girlfriends or that kind of stuff. I don't get a lot of, but it's kind of just like be like, yeah, that's not cool, that's not fun. Kind of be there for them as they kind of go through it. I think that's kind of how I do it. Social emotional learning. This is where I like I said, I really focus on growth mindset, learning from mistakes, taking risks in class, even if you're wrong, and it's okay to be wrong, and trying again. And I think that's where my social emotional learning comes into play. We do a lot of times we'll do Mindset Mondays where, we talk about that kind of stuff. We'll maybe watch a video or something like that. I can even talk about growth mindset with a Dude Perfect video, which is, really fun YouTube videos where they make trick shots and things like that. I'm like, look, these guys got famous over trying again, so we do that. And then I'm trying to go fast. Extracurriculars.
Take your time. Don't take your time. It's all right.
Extracurriculars. There's all kinds of things that the students can get involved in, after school or even during school, like clubs and sports and there are middle school sports through Learns, and so there's a lot of opportunities for that.
Is that something that you've noticed at all I say post-pandemic, in the return to schools, to in-person learning this year? Have kids been maybe a little more hesitant to get involved than they used to be, or are they just more hungry for that connection than ever?
So
or maybe some of both?
I'm a coach on our SRLA team, Students Run LA, which is we train 7th through 12th graders to run the Los Angeles Marathon. And we had more students involved in that this year than any time we've ever had it. And then I'm also just kind of realizing that our our middle school soccer teams actually have a JV and a varsity now. Middle school has JV and varsity because there's too many kids for one team. And so I've noticed, no, the students are getting involved. I just went to Catalina with our 8th graders, and we had the biggest group of 8th graders that Blair has ever had go to Catalina, over 100 kids. And even the camp was like, this is a really big group. And so I think that there's a desire for all kinds of extracurricular activities because they just weren't able to do it, in the last few years.
Yeah.
So
It's good. Okay. Terry, did you want to add anything from your experience on this topic?
My daughter has been super lucky to be at Marshall. She's been able to be in the musical the last 2 years. So even though they were at home, when she was a 6th grader, she still was able to do a virtual musical, which was really fun. And this year she's able to she's going to be in Matilda in a couple of weeks. And it's been a great experience to meet other students, including high school students, which they don't ordinarily mix with. I mean, they are a 6 through 12 campus, but ordinarily the high school students kind of stay on one side of campus and the middle schoolers are on the other side of campus. But it's been a great way for her to meet other people and stuff. And I know they are dying to have connection with other kids. So I think, where you can find the right fit for your kid to find an extracurricular, or a club or whatever it is, it's a really great way to meet other kids. She's had a great experience in a lot of different clubs too. Just meeting other kids who like to do the same thing as you do. I think it's a great way to learn to meet people when you're new to a school also.
Great. Okay. Yeah, Stella, did you want to add something?
Actually, it's a lot of it's been covered with the extracurriculars at school, and I completely stress that as well. There are the musicals, the learns programs after school. It could be an extracurricular apart from school that they go to after school or on the weekends as well. And then social emotional learning. Our teachers also do like breathing exercises in class, or calming strategies they teach the kids. So that they can, have their own coping mechanisms too. Active stretching. I know one of our teachers does that in his classroom as well. And then that interpersonal, when you address interpersonal conflict, having a trusted adult on campus, and it might be even the custodian. It could be someone that they connect with on campus. It could be a counselor, it could be the teacher. But for them to find someone that they could go to is really important. And there are so many people on campus that have made themselves available, of course, through their positions. But these are the individuals that the students themselves have made a connection with. And so I think that's finding that is extremely important. And one of our teachers was just speaking to me about that, and he teaches 6th and 7th graders, and he was just mentioning how important that is for our students to have that person on campus as well. It could be for conflicts, or could be for support, could be for questions, but it's really important as well.
Great. Yeah, I think the point that it may not be an official person whose job that is, but could be somebody who works in the cafeteria, or a custodian, or any number of people.
They strike up a conversation with, and then at lunchtime they keep striking those conversations with, or in the hallways, whatever. But it happens. It's someone they can.
It does. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So Laura, you want to talk a little bit about what we can do at home to nurture our kids as they're going through this time?
Sure. So some of the things that we can do seem pretty basic, but they help kids feel better about themselves. Hygiene, right? Some kids don't realize that they're starting to smell yet. You do, their teacher does, but they may not. So you have to find a way to gently suggest to them that now they need to shower every day. And here I bought you this really cool deodorant. So it's a fine balance between supporting them so that, they feel better and that no one will tease them. But, also just not being too pushy, right? You can discourage them from those body sprays. What is it? I'm sure Mr. Glenn knows all about that. Some horrible thing that they like to spray on themselves.
I hate Axe body spray.
There you go,
It is
Axe.
the worst, the worst.
So you may need to tell them that no, it does not replace soap. It does not make anything better. So hygiene, they may want to dress a little differently than they dressed in middle school, even if they can still fit into those clothes. And so, a shopping trip, to select some things that help them feel a little bit like bigger kids. Eating and sleeping. Again, kids, they have weird eating habits at times. You may catch them eating like chips with soda in there or whatever. Like, you have to make sure that you get some kind of healthy meal into them at some point during the day. And like I said before, sleeping, that they're getting enough sleep. Even if their friends supposedly are allowed to stay until all hours, you're not. You need your sleep. And to help them get that sleep, even if it means that devices have to be outside of the bedroom, even if it means that mom or dad checks on them at a certain time and turns off the lights, they do need that support still. Managing and embracing emotions. Okay, so as we said before, and you will know soon enough if you don't already, kids this age can be very volatile, especially if they haven't slept enough, or if they're hungry, or if they're just coming home from school, or if anything at all happens to just throw them off. And so you have to be ready to be with that, right? And we're used to, as parents, being empathetic. So we see that they're upset, and then we show an upset face, and then they get more upset, and it just goes back and forth. And so you have to kind of almost train yourself to just breathe and be a calm presence for them, so that you can help them regulate with your own affect. One of the things that I learned through Young and Healthy, which I think they've done at the schools and with some of the kids, is the idea that when kids are upset, this is what they're like inside. Okay, they're all rattled, and you have to wait until the glitter settles so you can have a conversation, or even say something to them, like, would you like a snack? So it doesn't take that long, but it takes a little longer than we usually give them. So I actually keep this glitter bottle by my desk so I can remember that if I see my children very upset, even though they're slightly older teens, that I need to breathe and give them a little time to settle and co-regulate. And also embracing emotions. As we said before, right now, their emotional part of their brain is very, very alive, and their good decision-making part of their brain is not quite mature enough yet. And that can be a little disconcerting to adults, but if none of us had emotions, we'd be robots, right? So like, kids this age are really interesting. And so just to allow them to have their emotions, help them, take a little bit of the edge off. But if they make an emotional decision, like, I don't know, I'm going to go, whatever, I'm going to dress this way, or I'm going to go do this thing that it sounds a little kooky to you, go with it, right? Don't just like stop them from everything that they want to do just because it's not reasonable. Communication and social media. As we said before, if they have a phone, or even if they don't, but they have internet access, social media becomes a really big thing, right? They're not old enough to be let loose completely in this wild world of social media. And so many parents have agreements with their kids. You can be on this social media platform, but not this one, or you can be on the internet, but you cannot have a Facebook account or a whatever account. It wouldn't be Facebook, it'd be something else. And many parents will want to have the password to their kid's phone or to their computer. They may have an agreement that you're allowed to look every so often, or that maybe I don't check unless I have a reason to check. So it depends on you and your child, but they are not old enough to be let out into the world just like that. So just a thought about that. And communication, you may want to have an understanding that even when they are upset, there is a way in which we talk to each other, right? So I get that you're upset. We do not use those words with each other. So it's okay to have those agreements. Now, in terms of the brain development, it is helpful to know and to remember that this is not forever, this stage that they're in. They will grow out of it and things will get a little smoother, right? And brain development is a marathon, right? So even though you would like them to be more reasonable and maybe less emotional, maybe more planful by next week, that's not going to happen. So just give them the time that they need to grow and grow up. It is important to be kind to kids and to model kindness and patience, even when they themselves are not being so kind and so patient. We have to show them and lead by example, right? I think that's all I wanted to say about that.
I want to sort of wrap up the last slide that we had and then kind of open it
Yeah.
up for some questions. So there are a few kind of final points that you had about nurturing ourselves, and you've sort of hinted at some of these already, but I'll just kind of roll them out and then we'll take some questions.
So stay calm. Take care of yourself. Oftentimes, parents notice that they're trying to fix their kid, calm their kid down, whatever it is that they're trying to do to their kid. But when they do those things to themselves, their child gets better, right? So when you get more exercise, more sleep, eat healthier, go to yoga, calm yourself down, whatever it is that you're doing, your child miraculously gets a little bit more, calm and whatever. So take care of yourself so you can stay calm for your kids. Again, it's all right and really necessary to set expectations, just like teachers have classroom rules. Set expectations for what you need from your tween, your teenager, what we do at home, what are the rules, and communicate those things to your children when they are calm, not when they are in the middle of a meltdown, but after a meal, after a nice walk or whatever, you sit down and say, okay, I haven't gone over these things, but now that you're starting middle school, I think we need some new rules or some new understandings, right? So do that, and maybe you write them down and put them somewhere. Use scaffolding whenever possible. I think what's really important to remember is that there are things that they need for us to do for them until they can do them, right? But we should not do things for them that they can do themselves. So if you've seen that they are able to write an email to a teacher, don't write it. Make sure that they do it. Maybe you sit nearby, but don't write it because they can do it. And every time we do something for them that they are able to do themselves, we are robbing them of an opportunity to feel good about themselves, to feel that sense of empowerment and agency. So that's a tricky one because we don't always know where they are and what they can and cannot do. So we have to kind of navigate that with them. And the last one is to set appropriate and ideally natural consequences. So for example, you were supposed to charge your Chromebook and you didn't. And then, your teacher got mad at you because you didn't have it. And then you didn't work. So now you have to stay at home instead of going out with your friend and do the work you were supposed to do this morning. That is a natural consequence that happened because they forgot to do the thing, right? And next time they probably won't forget to do the thing, or they won't forget as often. And last, don't be afraid to reach out for resources. Parenting is really hard. Parenting teens and tweens is really hard. And so ask questions, look to the school for resources. On the Penn website, we also have lots of resources. You're always welcome to email us so we can connect you with other parents who may want to talk about something. So don't go at it alone. Just go out and get yourself some support.
I'm just going to stop sharing at this point and open it up to questions because we have talked a lot. So I don't know if somebody wants to I'm just checking to see if there's anything in the, I don't see anything in the chat, but if you want to just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question, that's okay too. And I am just going to go and grab the link to our participant feedback survey. It's very short, but I am going to put it in the chat and ask that you take a moment to give us some feedback on this program. Was it helpful? Is there anything that we could do differently in the future? So there we go. That's in the chat now. Any questions? I know some people turned in some questions in advance. If there's anything that we haven't covered or that you had a follow-up question about, or that maybe you want to share, please unmute and wave your hand, or just jump in and ask. I think it must be late in the day. I think everybody's ready to be done. It's the sense I'm getting. So as Laura said, we're here. We will send a follow-up email with some links and some resources and the slides and so forth. I want to thank our guests, Stella Franco-Allen and Eric Glenn and Terry Richardson, and our interpreter, Ada Ramirez. And I think that I see Stella has a hand up. Go ahead.
You know what, something that came to my mind, enjoy the journey. I mean, really have fun with your kids during this time. It will pass quickly, and those memories that you create are really going to be priceless. And I just want you to have fun with them. My children are much older than probably any of your children are. And they survived, and I did too. And it was, and I have a lot of great memories of things that they accomplished, things that we did together, the challenges as well. And, you know, we're at a point where we can laugh at a lot of those things. At the time, we weren't really laughing at it, or they didn't think it was funny. But, you know, I just really want to encourage you to be part of your child's life and have fun at this point with them. They are changing, growing. And there's a tremendous amount of blessings coming your way. Just walk alongside them and enjoy it.
They have some amazing observations to make about the world, I found, at that age. They started, I mean, not that they didn't before, but it really, you know, I think several people have touched on this, but they just really are able to talk about things and notice things and have opinions about things that are really worth listening to and engaging with. So it is a fun age in that sense. All right, again, I just want to encourage you to take our participant survey. It really only takes a few minutes. And thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. I know one of my kids had you, and he really enjoyed your class and getting to know you. So
Jeremy.
yes, you know, Jeremy.
A lot, from what I've seen, he's a lot taller and skinnier now, which is crazy.
Yeah, but it takes a special person to enjoy middle school.
No, I can't, I won't. Yeah, I don't think I ever see myself stopping. I'm really enjoying it. So
that's sweet.
That's good.
All right. Well,
Great.
good night.
Well, good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.
You.
Good night,
I
everyone.
didn't need to leave abruptly. I need a middle schooler to help me with this tech stuff. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night.